Okay, let's dive in. Picture this. A city council vote happens, right? And immediately there's confusion. Top officials actually get the outcome wrong.
Yeah, and then things heat up really fast, accusations start flying.
Accusations that council members violated their oath of office just based on how they voted,
It went from arguing about the law
to
itself.
questioning the actual roles, the duties of the people voting.
Exactly. Our mission is basically to walk you through what happened. We're talking about proposed rules for church-based homeless encampments in Burien. A bill explicitly aimed at curtailing authorized encampments.
So right off the bat, the source is telling us the intent was restrictive, not exactly welcoming.
Definitely not. And it wasn't just like a minor tweak either.
No, the source really lays out how specific and pretty demanding these proposed rules were for any church thinking about hosting an encampment.
Hmm. And it even drilled down to the camp layout. It dictated mandatory spacing between, called tent groups.
Right, but the source points out, kind of dryly, that the bill never actually defined what a tent group is. Quite restrictive rules are on the table. Then comes the vote.
Yeah.
And the outcome, the article says, was 3-2-2.
Which means it failed, plain and simple.
Right. The source breaks it down. Jimmy Mata, Alex Andrade, and Mayor Kevin Schilling voted yes. They wanted the restrictions.
Stephanie Mora and Linda Akey voted no.
And then council members Sarah Moore and Hugo Garcia, they abstained. Didn't vote yes or no.
And this is where the immediate weirdness starts, according to the source, right after the vote failed.
Both city manager Adolfo Balon and Mayor Schilling claimed it had passed. Inaccurately, the source stresses.
Yeah, the article calls it an embarrassing defeat.
Councilmember Sarah Moore brought something up at the next meeting.
She revealed an email the city manager, Adolfo Balon, had sent to council members after that vote.
And this is where the core conflict really blows up, based on the report.
Balon's email, the article says, suggested that the council members who voted no, or the ones who abstained, had violated their oath of office to uphold state law, simply by not voting for this specific piece of legislation.
Wow, that's a heavy accusation.
It is.
Yeah.
And the source describes council member Sarah Moore's reaction at that meeting. She didn't just, mention the email.
She pushed back. Hard.
Yeah, defending the right of council members to vote how they see fit, or to abstain, She said she felt the city manager was basically questioning her purpose on the council.
And maybe the council's whole ability to function properly.
Exactly. It shifted the whole debate, didn't it? Suddenly it wasn't just about encampment rules, it was about the council's integrity, its autonomy.
And this fundamental question, can an appointed city manager tell elected officials they must vote a certain way to fulfill their oath?
Moore also used that moment to explain why she abstained, which the article details. She said, look, I'm not against all rules for church encampments. But the article says after she read the actual ordinance and talked to people who know about state law, about setting up shelters,
she came to believe it would actually backfire.
Right. She felt the proposed restrictions were so tight they'd likely limit the actual ability of churches to help the city address this crisis. Then, the article reports, Mayor Kevin Schilling jumped in during that same meeting.
And the source says he piled on Balon's criticism, didn't defend the council members.
No, he took a really strong line against abstaining. According to the source, he said council members are elected to do one thing: vote yes or no. Pretty blunt. A very clear stance against abstentions for any other reason.
And this is where the source provides some really a fascinating context. It looks back at the council's own voting record.
Yeah, the article mentions a review of Burien City Council minutes from just 2024 and 2025.
And what did it find?
A clear pattern. Most council members have abstained from votes in the past, including Schilling.
Including the mayor himself.
Okay.
The source gives examples.
Oh, yeah.
And the kicker, maybe, the source highlights that Mayor Schilling himself
abstained most recently in December, declined to vote on a list of proclamations for 2025.
So this history laid out in the article, it really adds a layer, doesn't it? It suggests that while the criticism of abstaining was sharp this time,
the actual practice is pretty common on this council, even among the critics. It definitely complicates the argument about doing your duty.
Right. Well, it's a situation where one failed vote
on some pretty restrictive rules for church encampments
quickly spiraled into this major conflict about the roles and rights of elected officials themselves, smarked by these serious claims about violating oaths.
And we've seen the different arguments laid out in the source. On one hand, the idea that voting no or abstaining here was somehow failing your duty.
Versus the argument for the right to vote your conscience or abstain if you think it serves your constituents or if you believe the proposed law is flawed, maybe even harmful.
And then there's that fascinating context from the source about the history of abstentions, how common it actually is on this very council.
Yeah, it really makes you think.
For sure. Considering the immense pressure on local officials, especially with complex, sensitive issues like homelessness, and seeing these clashing ideas about duty or upholding the law, you have to wonder, right? How do these internal political fights affect a city's actual ability to find workable solutions?
And what does it mean when past practice like abstaining clashes so directly with the criticism being leveled right now?